Testing. 1, 2, 1, 2. Testing. A little too hot. I said a testing. 1, 2, 1, 2. Was shaking. Alrighty. I think we're about ready to get this party started. What do you think? Alrighty. Ready, set. Hey, we're shaking, everybody. Welcome to the DisJointed podcast. My channel, DisJointed Daves, on twitch.tv. I'm also the host of the DisJointed podcast with Dave Germain, available on iTunes, on the Laughable app if you have an iOS device, or on Stitcher, all those other great places, man. This podcast is about how do you go from a 9-to-5 life to one of creativity. And you know what I'm going to start doing? I'm going to start that intro one more time because I did not record here. Hold on. Hey, we're shaking, everybody. Welcome to the DisJointed podcast. I'm your host, Dave Germain. This is the podcast where we ask the question, what does it take to go from a 9-to-5 life to one of creativity? And that's exactly what I've been doing. I started doing the audio of the podcast a couple of years ago. We're closing in on 200 episodes, man, so I'm pretty psyched about that. And my whole thing is that I wanted to find a way to keep myself accountable as far as, like, I knew I wanted to start doing stand-up comedy, and I was afraid I was going to give up on it. And so I've been listening to, like, Kevin Smith's podcast and Joe Rogan's podcast and Jay Moore's and a bunch of other great stuff. The Crab Feast, that was another one that I was listening to, and I'm like, I want to do a podcast. So I thought I would do it about stand-up comedy. I'm like, well, how do I go from that point A to point B? And I actually like doing the podcast more, at least when I started out anyways. I enjoy doing the podcast more than I did the stand-up or the open mics. So I'm like, well, if I want to keep doing this, I got to be able to, I got to find a way that I won't give up on it. That's basically what it is. So that's what I started doing, and it's been a couple of years since. I'm over 5 years into stand-up comedy. I'm still an open micer. I'm not going to give you guys and be like, oh, I know everything about this business. I don't know anything. I know a decent amount about the business as far as like the effort and stuff that I've put into it. You know, I am not a professional comic, which means I don't pay my bills with comedy. You know, not yet anyways. That's hopefully what we're trying to do. We're trying to transition into that, man. And when I started doing the Twitch channel, that was because I really, really, really wanted to find a way to expand the audience. And luckily, Twitch has been really, really good about trying to find different types of audience members, try to find different types of content rather than just like death matches and stuff. I don't like the way the camera's over here. Hold on. Let's try. That works a little better. Okay, because I felt like I was looking off to the side for you guys here. So where was it? Yeah, so Twitch has been a pretty great community so far when it comes to, you know, expanding the audience. I've had some great conversations via the chat room from folks from all over the planet and asking about comedy, but how is it that they can make that 9-to-5, that transition from their 9-to-5 life to one of creativity. And I'm asking a lot of questions here. I don't actually, I'm not going to pretend that I have every answer, but I can tell you what worked for me. Okay? So one of the things that, and you'll see I'll have a vodcast or the playlist after this, so you get an example of the type of interviews and stuff that I've done. So one of the things that I wanted to do, why am I still peaking? Is it like a certain tone that I'm making? Is it the brown note? Is that it? Is that what's going on? Ah, okay. I have no idea. Yeah, I know, right? My wife Jenny's here. She's reading her book over here. And looking for hats. So there's that. Oh, you know what? Let's see. Is that it? Was I brushing against it? All right. Either way, this is going to make a shitty audio episode because that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to turn this into an audio episode. Let me turn this down one more sec. See, that's why I talk about things as far as like comedy goes, not necessarily how to do an awesome Twitch show, because you would do things like pre-production before you actually started. So one of the things that I had done years ago is I bought this book. Actually, this was just after my divorce. I had finally moved out of the townhouse that we had bought together, my ex-wife and I had been living or like sleeping on a recliner for a couple of months. And luckily, my good buddy Clay, when I found a place to stay, he actually gave me this old single bed, or no, it was a twin size bed. Was it a twin? Yeah, it was a twin size bed. So that way I actually had an actual bed to sleep on. So I was starting over from scratch. Like when I took all the stuff out of the house, and I was able to put it in basically like a closet in a storage facility. So it was really like, wow, everything that I own I could fit in my car. And it was a Toyota Corolla. It wasn't even a big car. So it was definitely starting from the ground zero. So either way, I'd take a sip of a coffee for the working man. Or sip of work for the coffee man. That'll work too. So a friend of mine told me, actually, you know what? I'll be honest with you. It wasn't even a close friend of mine. It was an acquaintance of mine from back at my AMDA days, back in New York City. As a matter of fact, the building behind me, that's the Lucerne Building, 201 West 79th Street, the corner of 79th and Amsterdam in the Upper West Side. Me and my friends, we spent our Sunday nights basically just hanging out. It wasn't a full hotel at that point, really. And yeah, we were just basically, we would hang out on the stoop there and smoke cigarettes and watch people walk by. Sunday nights, next to that, it's not there anymore, but there was this bar called Chaz and Wilson's, and Sunday nights, that was a place to be. You'd see a bunch of celebrities come in there, like Madonna would be in there, Rosie O'Donnell. It's back in the 90s. Tupac was there, Boys to Men, a bunch of cool people just to hang out. And it was a trip for us because we were all like young, starving artists and stuff, so I thought it would be appropriate that I would have that as my backdrop for my Sunday show. So, okay, and I'm not going to go through this every episode, but since this is my first Sunday night on the stoop, officially with actually have an idea and a show in mind, I thought I would talk about it. So when I had gotten divorced, right, or I was getting divorced, everything that I owned could fit in a Toyota Corolla. A friend of mine gave me an old twin bed that I think between, like that bed got passed around to quite a few people, so I think at some point every one of my circle of friends had sex with somebody on this bed, so it was well cared for. I guess that was the best way to put it. And Facebook was still kind of wasn't as big as it is now. Man, I was finding a lot of my old classmates and stuff, and so there was this gal by the name of Katya Reinhardt. She was in, like I said, I knew her actually through a friend of mine, Stacia Kingston, and one of the things that she had suggested to me is because she felt that she was artistically stifled, I guess, frustrated would be a nice way to put it. And I'm going to share this thing. I should probably share this out to Twitter, shouldn't I? Going live, son. Tweet. Share to Facebook. Going live. Like I said, this is going to make such a shitty audio. I don't even think I'm going to use this as an audio episode. I have too much love and respect for the people who listen to my show. All two of them. Let's go. One more. Let's go into the DCPN. Tweet. All right. Trying to think if there's anything else where I could share this to. Not really. Okay, fair enough. It's done and done. So she tells me about this book called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. And she says, like, she got really, really, a couple of years ago, like a year or two outside of AMDA, which had to been, 96, 97? And this was in the early part of the millennium. When she was texting with me, and she's like, yeah, do the projects in this book. Read the book. Don't cheat. If you don't do any of these projects, if you skip these or too many of these, you're only cheating yourself. But try it, and it's like and it'll change your life. I'm like, okay, I'll give it a shot. And the book that I'll be talking about, I'm going to do I'm restarting this book. It's a 12-week course. You read one chapter a week. You do the projects in them. And what I'm going to do is just going to do kind of like an overview of what each chapter, what it was about, and how I interpret it. I'll read a couple of excerpts from it. But I really, really encourage anybody who's listening to this, you really need to buy the book. It's not expensive. Okay, there's a lot of like work page kits and a bunch of other stuff like that. You could do that if you feel the need. That's what you need to do in order to get the most out of your whole experience. But for me, I'm a cheapskate when it comes to myself, so I went and bought the book at a secondhand store. And I think I found it anywhere between $5 to up to $19. Either way, neither of those are going to break your bank. As a matter of fact, I couldn't find. I had 3 copies at some point, but apparently they're all in mini storage. So I had to buy the book once again. So this time the money actually goes to you, Julia Cameron. I hope you enjoy it. But I bought it on for iBooks, so I'm just going to read it through my phone since I do everything through my phone anyways. Well, this and like I said, I encourage you to go get the book. Do that. If you want to follow, do this with me, you're more than welcome to. You might, if you want to start a week behind or whatever, that's fine, man. The book suggests to start it on a Sunday because it's, for me, that's the end of my week, and that's kind of when I get all my homework done and all that other good shit. So that's how I'm going to do it. You could do it however you like it. But I will say this: the difference between when I started this book and when I finished it were drastically different. Before I had done this book, I had pretty much given up on anything that I ever really started. My brain was addicted to brain crack, and if you don't know what that is, search Zay Frank brain crack. As a matter of fact, here. Brain crack. Do a Google search for that, and he has this really. Zay Frank was one of the first vloggers out there, and he was a real experimental dude. I don't know what he's doing right now, but this particular video was very uplifting to me. And the whole idea, the gist of it is that if you don't actually start to take your ideas and your inspirations and try to turn them into a reality, eventually your brain is only going to get used to just making up the ideas. It's not going to know exactly how to turn that into reality. So you just kind of keep setting yourself up for disaster. You'll have this great idea on a silver platter that everybody's cheering for you, and it's not going to actually happen because you don't have the skills to actually turn it into reality. This book helped me do that. So I believe before I had started, I had done some painting. That was about it. And my dog's really pissed off because, it's Jenny's dog, and he just watched me bang the hell out of her, and he gets pissed off when that happens. So, fuck that little chihuahua. All right. So she still laughs at my jokes, folks. Thank you. Thank you very much. That's one of the many reasons why we got married. Yeah. So I had done some painting, right, and that was just as kind of a hobby. At first, I thought I might be really great at it, and then I saw people who were really putting forth the effort, and I'm like, oh, I'm not one of them, but I still enjoyed painting. I haven't done it in a while though, but then that led me to learn how to do, how to play the guitar, right, and try to write a couple of sappy songs and stuff. And then that kind of led into, like, I took a screenwriting class at a JC, a video editing class, a bunch of stuff like that. And the whole thing was, and eventually what that also led me going to an open mic, and that's the kind of medium that so far has really stuck the most. I guess that and podcasting, but the point is that I was way closer to the person who I wanted to be versus the guy who I actually was. And this might not make a lot of sense because I know this is Twitch, and I know there's a lot of young audience members out there, which that's not a bad thing, by the way. But I know like I said, there's a lot of young audience members, and for maybe and I hope you don't ever have to deal with this, but there's a good chance what'll happen is when you get into your mid-30s, especially into your 40s, you realize that you have more years behind you than you do ahead of you, right? You're closer to the end than you are to the beginning. And you really have to take stock and take a look and like, is this the person who I wanted to be? there was the person who I wanted to be when I was 16, and that guy wanted to be an actor. He wanted to be in a film. He wanted to be on TV, and he also wanted to have a date with this girl, Stephanie Carter, from a girl he knew in high school. And I could say after that book, I had the wherewithal that I've conquered 2 of those goals. You know, still got 1 more to go. I've got more goals to do, but those were the 3 goals that I wanted to do when I was 16. And when I got divorced, I realized that I was so far away from who I wanted to be. I would look in the mirror, and I'm like, I recognize that guy looks like me. He sounds like me, but he totally is not me. So what the hell am I going to do? So maybe you might feel somewhat the same way, and this book kind of helped me get through it. So one of the things that you're going to need to do, aside from buying the book, you're going to need to get ready for it. You're going to have to set your alarm clock at least like a half hour earlier than what you normally do, and you're going to have to do this thing called the morning pages. These are essential. If you don't do these, you're really, really cheating yourself. This is like doing cardio for your imagination, for your brain, or for your subconscious. You could do it any time of the day. I've done that before, but I find it's most effective if you do it right when you wake up in the morning, because your brain isn't fully awake yet, and you're more likely to get some stuff from your subconscious. Like, it's a weird thing. I don't know why it happens, but by the time you get to the second page, I mean, so there's some days it just flows out and I bang it out real quick. There's other days it takes me a long time to write 3 pages, longhand, you know. And but there's a lot of good stuff in there, and that's something I'm actually looking forward to doing, just because my writing sometimes I feel gets stagnant when it comes to comedy. You know, I bet like I don't actually, I'll come up with an idea, but the only time I really think about bits is either if I'm using the bathroom or I'm taking a shower or I'm driving. And glad I'm using that time productively, but there's definitely better work that could be done. You know, the show that I was at last week at the Dab Lounge in Colorado, if anything, that proved to me that I saw guys that work way harder at this than I do. And so they helped me raise my own bar there. So thank you so much, Jeff Albright, Sam Talent, and Harrison Garcia. Those guys are freaking badass. So, like I said, you're going to need to get some paper, some pencils, some place to put these things. I use a 3-ring binder, and you don't have to reread these like day after day. And nobody else has to see them either, but it's important to try to get that stuff started right off the bat. Okay? All right. So, let's see. Let me open up. Let's go to the table of contents here. So week 1 of The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, available on Amazon, on iTunes, and wherever you can access the internet, basically. Week 1 covers is about recovering a sense of safety, and this chapter, it's weird because when I read it, or when I was reading it, she's really good about trying to. She doesn't always necessarily go straight to what the issue is. There's sometimes she's going to kind of dance around and stuff before you kind of get that aha moment. That's the reason why I don't want to read too much out of this for you, because there's a lot of stuff, great stuff, just in the introduction and the basic tools, spiritual electricity, the basic principles, all that other cool stuff. But there was all these aha moments I had when I was reading it for the first time, and I don't want to rob that of you guys, right? Do it on your own. Okay. But she talks a lot about shadow artists. And if you're not actually, this particular channel and everything is kind of designed towards comedy night, you know, and stand-up comedy, and all this stuff is kind of has to deal with my own stand-up and stuff. That's why I put it in this community. But a shadow artist is somebody who is a creative person, but they don't have the ability or the belief in themselves to actually be that. So they tend to be like somewhat of a supporting role. Like there's stories of somebody who, this guy who was very financially successful, but he really wanted to be a visual artist. Like, he was really into painting and stuff, and that's what he really liked to do. But his family really wasn't thinking about, or were going to be encouraging as far as like him being a painter or a visual artist. So they told him to go into more of a financial sector of the world, and he was very successful in that. But he does manage to do things like be very supportive of other artists. He has a big art collection and stuff like that. But his whole life is still miserable because he's not doing what it is that he wants to do. Or there's just basically, I don't know, like and I've seen this before, somebody wants to be really creative, but they're too scared to do it themselves, but they will date an artist. You know, artists tend to like to date other artists, and as a result of that, sometimes that can work into a codependent relationship, and then it's one of those things you got to look out for, especially, like, I don't know, just artists in general, performers especially, I would say. So she goes through a lot of these things about trying to discover in which ways that you yourself, or just I'll speak for me, I myself, am being a shadow artist. Which at the time, the first time I was reading it, there was many ways that I was being a shadow artist. One of them was being by a cynical asshole. Yeah, that was one way that I put it. Being a critic and stuff, like being really just bitchy about everybody else because I was too pissed off at myself to actually go out and take those baby steps and become the performer that I wanted to be. At this point, though, I still hit up open mics. I still do podcasts. I'm way more creative now than I was before. But I'm still trying to figure out. I have to go through these steps and really see where it is that I'm holding myself back. There are some projects and stuff that she does in here as far as like your enemy within, core negative beliefs, trying to find out exactly what those are, because this is the weird thing about ego, guys. It's which it is part of you. You're never going to get rid of it. But ego, for the most part, is designed, and this I get this from reading The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. It's designed to keep you safe, and the way that it's going to keep you safe is by maintaining the status quo of your existence. Because whether you hate your existence or not, it's worked for you yesterday. It worked for you the day before, meaning that you didn't die. You know, you still got food, preferably. I know I did. So anything that's going to try to change that world that you live in at that moment, it's going to fight against. So it might drag up a memory or something that somebody said way back when you were a kid, you know, and it's going to try to make that formulate the idea. By the way, I watched Inception last night. That's where maybe some of this comes from. Either way, you might have been attacked by a group of billionaires, and they just wanted to fuck with your dreams. But no, more likely the things that she talks about in there, it's just, that's where I say doing the project really, really helps and stuff, because it helps you kind of break down what and where where these issues come from. Like I remember, this is something that I had found a way to kind of get away from, but I had started comedy years and years and years ago, and the guys who are running this open mic in Tempe, Arizona, it was Ron Babcock and Ryan McKee. All right, Ryan McKee now he's a writer on the James Corden show. You know, every time I see a post of that guy, I'm really happy for Ryan. I really am, but part of me wonders, like, if I would have kept up with comedy and stuff, would I be farther? Would I be a professional comic by now had I not stopped the first time? But the reason why I had stopped is because I was, one, I picked the wrong person to get married to. I made that mistake. I'll own that. But every time you go out, if you're trying to do comedy and you have somebody and you're involved with somebody's relationship, it's a lot to ask them that you're going to spend hours and hours and hours at various bars around whatever city that you live in, and they're just going to have to trust you that you're not going to do anything other than doing comedy. Well, and not for that good reason, but I did not have that level of trust with my marriage. So there was, at least with my first marriage, so I'd just get these panic texts every now and then, or this angry text like she's pissed about something and she's going to have to talk. We're going to talk about something when you get home. When is that mic going to be done? And so I thought, if I wanted to be a good husband, that I should probably give up comedy and focus on the marriage, because that's supposed to be more important. Well, ever since then, I got it in my head that anytime I wanted to do something creative or something for me, that meant that I was hurting somebody that I cared about. So as a result, in order to kind of put myself up on the cross, basically, I would suffer by not being creative and not being who I wanted to be in order to help all the other people in my life. It sounds crazy, but that's what it is. And the book, going through it the first time, helped me get through that. So I'm looking for, when I do these things, I'm looking to see what other things are back there in my head. What are the other things that have that are kind of convincing me and kind of nudging me to not push myself to my farthest ability, because I've been pushed before. AMDA was very, very rough. AMDA was one of those places that it was like Marine boot camp for actors, which I don't mean any disrespect to the Marines and stuff, but it's the similarities is that you go there and you get broken down on every level, and then they build up somebody who has a lot of many skills in performance. So, like, I've done that before, and it's been a while since I really pushed myself. So, I'm curious to see what it is, the reason why I haven't done it. Let's see. Your ally within, affirmative weapons. That's another thing that she does, man. It's not like it's not enough in anybody's life to point out where all the shit's gone wrong. I think that you do need affirmations, and every time I think of affirmations, I think of Al Franken's character, Stuart Smalley. You know, where I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me. That whole thing. So the idea of, like, all right, you need to give yourself some affirmations. I'm like, I'm not wearing a scarf. I'll tell you that much right now. But those are important. Like, there was this quote that I saw and I thought it was absolutely fabulous. I'm going to read it for you. We have been taught to believe that negative equals realistic and positive equals unrealistic. And that's an excerpt from The Artist's Way, available on iTunes and iBooks and Amazon and stuff. I'm just going to keep saying that so that way she doesn't think I'm trying to make money off her shit. It's amazing the different ways that we can beat ourselves up and convince ourselves to that we're not worth shit. So it's going to take a lot of work. That's what this week 1 is about, is trying to get all that stuff out in the open. And it's going to be kind of rough, but man, if you can get through it, you've laid down a solid foundation to really start building some stuff back up again. Let's see. All right, I'll get back to that one. Why did I actually put that quote down? You know what, I'm just going to read it. I'm trying to remember. I thought it was pretty fascinating, but I can't remember why I did it, so I'll just read it now. Okay, protecting the artist child within. Remember your artist as a child. Find and protect that child. Learning to let yourself create is like learning to walk. The artist child must begin by crawling. Baby steps will follow, and there will be falls. Yucky first paintings, beginning films that look like unedited home movies, first poems that would shame a greeting card. Typically, a recovering shadow artist will use these early efforts to discourage continued exploration. That is absolutely true. This is something that we talk about actually with Deathmatch, with Deathmatch Radio 1. Vince, he was on the podcast a couple days ago, and we were talking about learning how you have to be uncomfortable if you really want to push yourself and to be a better artist, or a better comic or a better streamer or anything like that. You got to put yourself in uncomfortable situations and force yourself to get better. There is no easy pill that's going to make you suddenly be awesome at this. I know a lot of people think that's Adderall, but I don't think it is, guys. I know you feel awesome while you take it, but I've grew up around too many meth addicts to know, like, shit's going to fall. The wheels are going to fall off on that one. But, like playing the guitar, I'll use this as an example. Until your hands have built up calluses, every note that you play is not going to sound right. It's going to take a while to actually build up those calluses and build up the time. And if you're going to be pissed at yourself because you're not a musical genius from the get-go, then you're just doing yourself a disservice. So just understand that it's going to be a rough going and stuff. You're going to make a shitload of mistakes, but we're only taking baby steps here. The reason why we're not setting up our goals super high right now is because, especially when you start out, if you don't have the skills for it, it's easy to set these lofty goals, and when you don't make it, when you give up on it, well, of course you've given up. That goal was way too high. Let's say if my goal was I want to be an actor again, okay? Saying something like, I want to be an A-list actor or be in a movie with Tom Cruise. Yeah, I'm going to start out by doing that. Is it possible? Could that be done? Technically, yes, because we both exist on the same planet, and it is possible that I can get hired to be on the next Tom Cruise film. More than likely, however, that's not going to happen. So it's better to start with baby steps. Like, all right, I'm going to pick up a book like An Actor Prepares, or Respect for Acting with Uta Hagen's book, or Konstantin Stanislavski, anything like that, right? And then maybe I take a class, and then maybe I keep building my way up that, So understand those baby steps are going to be important. You have to find out what those baby steps are for you, and I hope that you do. I hope you actually join me in this chat room at some point, and we could talk about all this stuff. Let's see, the next thing that you'll talk about in that tasks. So these tasks and stuff that she gives, I'll give an idea for maybe one or two of these. Like I said, I'm not going to do the whole entire thing just because I think it's worth it to you to buy the book, The Artist Way by Julie Cameron, available on iBooks and Amazon. You know what? I'm going to get some more coffee here. Let's see. Give me 1 second. I'm going to put this break up here right now. How about if I turn the mic on? Huh? That would work great, wouldn't it? Guys, thanks for the host, Mr. Divian. I appreciate that. My buddy John is my brother from another mother, man. Him and Pete, the inner circle. We spent many nights hanging out on that stoop, man. It was pretty awesome. My 20s would not have been what they were without him. So thank you so much. All right. So, all right. So for the folks who are just catching on, I'm not going to repeat everything I just did, but we're talking about The Artist's Way with Julie Cameron. This is going to be a Sunday evening session that I do on the Stoop at the Lucerne. Sunday nights on the Stoop, and we're talking about I'm going to go week by week. The Artist's Way, right, of by Julia Cameron, available on iBooks and Amazon. Let's see. I'm going to do this. Should probably put week 1. There you go. Transition. Zoom. All right. So what we're going to do is week by week, I'm going to be going through the steps of the Artist's Way. I told myself at the beginning of the year 2017 is that I was going to push myself into places that I'm not comfortable with. So one of them has been a diet. I've been doing that. I've actually lost weight. I'm finally under 300 pounds, which is funny because most of the trolls that I get on this thing that are like, why don't you lose some weight? I'm like, I already did, idiot. Like, I don't have the heart to tell them, honestly. I know they were really happy. They thought they were going to get me with the fat thing, but I'm like, most of my jokes are about my body anyways. Which reminds me, I need to come up with some new jokes. Because it's like if you see a big guy go up on stage, chances are he is going to talk about his weight and stuff. And like, I get that. And that is part of what my life is. And I try to find those things to be interesting, but there's only so much. Like, I think John Panay covered most of this stuff without his career. Like, that dude got all the fat jokes, and they're all his. So, let's see. I'm going to go on to tasks in just a moment. Your list. All right. So, this book is going to be, it's divided up for the most part, the meat and potatoes of it, into 12 chapters, right? And each week there's going to be different exercises, just like a workout routine. If you want to get creative, man, you're going to have to work out your brain, work out your artist, and all that other good stuff. Especially if you haven't been creative for a long time, it's going to take you a while for the creative part of you to even trust you again. And that's one of those things that we're going to learn how to do in this book. So, let's see, tasks. I'll just start with, there are 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 tasks, 9, 10 actually to do for the first week. So there's a lot of homework and everything, but most of these things can be done fairly quickly. I'll just talk about the quintessential ones, the ones that I've done before, which I'm going to definitely do again. But yeah, okay. Like I said, we're not going to read through all of them. All right, number 1, every morning set your clock 1/2 hour early. Get up and write 3 pages of longhand stream of consciousness morning writing. Do not reread these pages or allow anyone else to read them. Ideally, stick these pages in a large manila envelope and hide them somewhere. Welcome to the morning pages. They will change you. That is true. I definitely... There's things about my thought process that I didn't realize why I was thinking a certain way or why I've had certain feelings about certain people. And one of the things that this actually helped me get over is that I was having this on and off again turbulent relationship with this gal. It was the first one right after my divorce, and or actually after the separation, to be honest with you. And there's this thing that happens, especially right after a divorce, is that you really miss being married. And you want to get involved in another relationship right away. You don't have to be married to do this. You could just be a serial monogamist, I guess. That's the way to call it. And there was a lot of great things about that relationship. She was very affectionate in a way that I had really been missing and stuff. But there were certain things about her life that the way that she wanted to live that I did not, And this was still full-on codependency. So I'm like, here, let me try to fix you. I'll tell you what to do. It's like having that person, maybe gals will be able to relate to this as well, but you have that friend of yours that's always in a shitty relationship. one after another, and they're always talking about how crappy they always get treated, and you want to be there and be like, hey, I would never treat you that way. And they're like, what? Get out of my face. I have no interest in you whatsoever. And you're like, huh? How the hell does that work? You said you wanted somebody who's going to treat you nice. I am a person who will treat you nice, but not, okay, whatever, Took me a while to get to that. But either way, when I was doing these pages the first time through, there was a lot of things where I'd be angry about it. I'm like, I don't know why she does this. I don't know why this happens and stuff. Then I thought, I don't know, why do I think that I could fix this? Why is this my responsibility? It's not. Am I using this to distract myself from actually working on me? Oh, yes, I am. That's because I love working on her problems instead of my own. Hers are much easier to fix. The only frustrating thing is she doesn't want to listen to me. But if she did, then what would I have to do, And I realized that I was my toxic part of that relationship. And that's something that you learn through the morning pages, because you get to find out exactly how your brain works. Sounds kind of crazy, sounds silly, but, your brain is the one who's in the driver's seat for the most part, right? So why is your life not the way that you want it to be? You're on the same page, aren't you? Aren't you? Maybe not. So another reason why to do this whole book. Another one, and I'll probably start round a third on this one, guys. Because, like I said, there's a lot of really great things in here. But, let's see. That is not that one. Not that one. Okay, this one was really, really important to me, and this is the hardest one that I had to do. Take yourself on an artist date. You will do this every week for the duration of the course. A sample artist date is take $5 and go to your local 5 and dime, buy silly things like gold stickum stars or tiny dinosaurs, some postcards, sparkly sequins, glue, a kid's scissors and crayons. Might give yourself a gold star on the envelope each day you write, just for fun. And the artist date was, I'm going to try to paraphrase some of this stuff, is that try to think of things that you wanted to be, like 5 things you wanted to be when you were a kid. It doesn't matter how silly or crazy that they were. We're not talking about realism here. We're just talking about things that fascinated you when you were a kid. And Spider-Man was one of those things that fascinated me. Dungeons and Dragons, because my brother played it, and the whole elves and things and the archers, that fascinated me. There was a bunch of other things. Being an actor, of course, being a performer, I've always wanted to do that since I was a kid, but I was already kind of working on that anyways. Being a superhero, that was those things, like, stuff that you want to be when you were a kid. So an example of things to take an artist day should evolve around things that the kid part of you wants to do, right? So I've always loved video games. I've ever since I saw one. I remember the first time I saw an Atari. That was back in had to have been there. Well, gosh, man, we were in Saudi Arabia, I think, because there was a lot of rich families there. So, but they had an Atari, and it seemed like a space age type game thing. But I remember just being instantly just like, wow, this is going to be the next best thing. And so arcade games were a big part of things that I loved to do when I was a kid. So one of the things that I've done this once, been here to Denver to do this once, and I haven't gone back since, which is a bummer because I really enjoyed myself. But going to an arcade, right, and keeping myself like, all right, I'm going to only spend an hour here or a half hour or whatever, but I'm just going to have fun and not worry about anything else, just to try to get that sense of joy back. Another thing that I could be doing is, like I said, Spider-Man was always pretty cool, right? Well, I might not be able to do this right away, but I'm definitely going to work towards it. But taking one of those little indoor rock climbing classes or whatnot, that would be freaking awesome. I loved climbing trees when I was a kid. That was really, really fun. That's something I haven't experienced in a long, long time. Now, obviously, when we're talking about like lofty goals and shit, I'm not going to jump right into that. I still got a little ways health-wise to go before I do that, because I'm only going to start pulling muscles and tendons and stuff like that if I jump into it. But that's something else that I could work on towards, like as far as an artist date goes. I'm not sure how I would go about this next one as far as the Dungeons and Dragons and stuff, but I would love to take an archery course. I would love to learn how to shoot a bow and arrow. That would be so badass. So maybe that's something else that I'm going to do. But those are a little bit more things that cost money. I got to find some things that don't cost any money. One of the things that was always really good, and she talks a lot about this, she actually wrote a whole other book about that, was going for walks. Going for walks, 20-minute walks, which, I've done that around the apartment complex because I live in a nice apartment complex, or around the neighborhood or whatnot. Sometimes I just like to listen to music, maybe from that era, from the 80s or whatnot. But it's definitely those little things like, those are projects and stuff that time spent focusing just on you and your artist, which you have to think of as a child, at least as far as this book is concerned. That was the toughest thing for me to do last time. Like, being really introspective and being really brutal, about, oh, this is why you're doing this is why you're doing that. That one, it was way easier than trying to do something nice for me. Nice and healthy for me. There's a difference between, I don't know, we'll talk about selfishness and further chapters and stuff like that, but there's a good way to be selfish, or a productive way to be selfish, and an unproductive way to be selfish, So, like, for example, I love playing video games, right? We've already established that. I was in a raid today. We're working on some stuff, and it's a joyous thing for me, but at the same time, I don't have a lot of days off or time off at the same time with my wife, and I thought, what, this is an unproductive use of video game time and stuff. So I stopped doing that, and I spent the rest of the day with my wife, and I'm really glad that I did that. I actually got way more out of that than I would have just playing video games and stuff, because it's important to connect with people. So especially people who are close to you, very important. But so for the end of this week, if you want to follow along with it, guys, what you're going to need to do, get yourself some pencils, some paper, 3-ring binder, I guess, we could store this stuff. But try to wake up or set your alarm a half hour early. Start doing the morning pages. What I am going to do is that every time I finish my morning pages, and this is a way that we could help ourselves be accountable. If you want to be part of this, follow at the DCPN. Where is that? Right there. Yep. Follow at the DCPN. All right. Because every time I finish those pages, I'm just going to say morning pages done and tweet it, send it out there. Follow me, and so that follow me, say, hey, this is about the artist way or whatnot. I'm going to follow you back so that maybe we keep ourselves accountable, something like that. So that way you don't feel completely alone in doing it. I already know that I could do this without anybody following me, but, maybe this is something to work on. All right. Well, man, I think this has been a fairly productive use of Sunday nights on the Stoop. I am going to be reading or doing the projects for week 1 of The Artist Way. If you want to follow along and do the same thing, I highly encourage you to do it. And I'll be back. I'll have other episodes for the DisJointed podcast, obviously, that aren't focused on The Artist Way. But as far as the Sunday nights shows are concerned, that's where it's going to be. And as soon as this thing is done, I'm going to put it up on YouTube. So hopefully my YouTube audience will actually start watching and taking part here on Twitch. And thank you so much for listening, guys. I appreciate this. And signing off for the DisJointed podcast, I'm Dave Germain. You guys have yourself a great week.
DisJointed Productions.